Welcome back to another chapter of this Hobby Horse Masterclass. So we've now reached a very exciting stage in the crafting journey, and that is shading or painting or whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of different ways of coloring your hobby horse. You can use everything from acrylic paints to eyeshadow or dry pastels or even airbrush. In this episode I'm not going to be covering how to paint with or using an airbrush. That will actually be like a separate series on its own. However, we are going to be painting today with acrylic paints. So for this painting session I have some materials I'd just like to go over. Here I have some basic acrylic paints I have in all of the primary colors, so yellow, blue, red, and then black and white. To make all of my different shades of brown and so on. I will be mixing these on camera so you'll see exactly how I mix together the paints. I also have some brushes. I mainly like to use these chisel tip brushes like this. And to mix the paint I also have a palette knife. And then of course I have a tray or a palette where I will be mixing my paints on. And I also have a glass of water to thin out the paints. So I guess this will be more of a painting class than it will be like a hobby horse sewing class. So I hope you like painting because we're about to get started. So before you get going, this is really when it's good. If you haven't already made a sketch of your hobby horse, like how you want it to look like when it's all painted, this is when I recommend you to make a sketch. And so that is what I'm going for here. So I'm just gonna keep that kind of on the side. And I'm gonna go ahead and mix some paints. It's mostly just gonna be neutral colors like browns and blacks. So we want to create kind of this brown color but a little bit darker so that we can start blocking in some general shapes. So painting is like this entire science of its own. Me personally, I really like mixing the paints myself. There are of course ready-made dark browns that you can buy, but I just really prefer the look of blending it together yourself. So this brown is kind of the color that we're looking to get right now. So I'm just gonna grab yellow, I'm gonna grab some red, and I'll start mixing these together a little bit. So it's kind of like a warm brown, so I'm giving it a lot of red in there. And here comes the blue to even it out. And get some more red in there. I'm also gonna grab just a little bit of black in there to make it a bit more desaturated. There we go. I'd say that is quite close. Maybe it's a little bit too dark, but I think this is a good base, and I'm just gonna make this a little darker now, just a little. What I'll do now, I'll actually not put this paint directly onto the horse. What I'll do is I'll grab my paintbrush and a little bit of water, and I'll actually kind of make it a little thinner like this, so you don't get this really thick layer of paint that will kind of become, like it will make a hard surface on the fabric. You kind of want to thin it out a little bit. Got our horse here, and the first thing I like to do is, and also make sure again that the fabric is laying all nice and flat. First thing I like to do is just go in and start painting these shapes here. So we have this, here is going to be a nice shadow. Hope you can see that. It's looking great. Go ahead and draw another one here. Down here I'm going to smoothen that line out just a little bit. And what I'll do next is I'll just very, very lightly make this line that goes here. So this is more like, you could call this like kind of a sketching phase, where you're, working on the horse to kind of build up your shapes. And then later you'll go in with darker colors and make it more pronounced. Last thing I'll do as a sketch on this side is I'll simply very lightly just block in where I want. I want some of that darker shades also up here on the neck. Just go ahead and block that in. Okay, so I think I've managed pretty well here to create two sides that look kind of similar. It's kind of hard to see in this light. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make this brown color a little darker. So I have my brown here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm simply gonna take a little more black, and then only on this, you know, kind of small, not the entire thing, because I might wanna still use that for something else, and that was too much black. I'll just show you quickly how I make this thinner. So I'll grab a little bit of water on my brush, and I'll go in and I'll just grab some of that paint, and then I'll kind of swoosh it around here until it's as thin as I want it. So that's looking good. And what we're gonna do is we're simply gonna go back in, and we're gonna keep painting, keep making these shapes darker. I'm always throwing an eye on this little sketch I did. Try to start blocking in these darker hues here up by the forehead. I think I'm gonna dare to go even darker, because this is still a bit too light. Probably should have said this a little earlier, but when we get shading, we want to really also be shading, you know, around the mouth and also in the mouth. But up until now, we've been having these stitches in the mouth, remember, from when we stuffed? So now is actually an excellent time to remove those stitches so that we can also shade, you know, in the mouth and in the corner of the mouth. So I'm just gonna use like a pair of scissors here to kind of carefully cut away the string. And as you can see, when we took the string out, we now have a lovely, lovely closed mouth here. I'm gonna go, and I'm also gonna shade in the mouth, like this. So the shading process is really one of those stages that can take the longest time, depending on how detailed you are. You can simply get it done and shade around the nose and around the eye and call it a day. But I really enjoy this stage, so I like taking some extra time here to really make sure I get, you know, the look I'm going for. I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. The last thing I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take some lighter brown, and I'm gonna shade just here closest to the mouth, and maybe add some highlights around here just to give it, you know, some extra dimension. I'm gonna take white, and a little dried up now. I'm gonna take some white down here, and a little bit of yellow, and just a tiny bit of red. And I could put that all together. Okay. I'm pretty happy with how that color turned out. Good. Oops, too much there. I want to add a little bit of pink to the nose here. Light pink. So I have all this white here, and I'm gonna just move it down here actually. And I'm just gonna take a little bit of red. And I'll mix it. It was way too much. Take some away. And I'll just mix a very, very light pink here. That's better. So I'm just lightly touching here on the nose. I don't even know if you can see that, but it is actually a little pink. Okay, so one more thing that we have to do is we have to add the little white dot in the eye. Right now this is just a pin that I put in there as a placeholder, but we want to make sure, or we want to make this like, you know, permanent, right? So that we can use this pin for something else. So we're gonna use more of a pointy brush like this to actually make the little dot in the eye. And if you have a white pin like this is a really good placeholder for you to kind of experiment with where you want that white dot to go. But when you've decided on a location, I think I'm pretty happy with how that looks on my horse. I'm just gonna grab here a little dab of white. So it's kind of like a little ball of paint there. And I'm gonna go to my horse. I'm gonna take the pin out, put it aside, and with this little dab of paint, I will make a dot. So that looks pretty good. And then just repeat that on the other side. Great! So the only thing left now is cleaning everything up. So make sure that you clean your brushes thoroughly and, you know, wipe off everything from your tray. But we have ended up here with a very, very nice looking hobby horse. I hope you also had some success in your painting. We're now very close to being finished. We're only missing the mane and the stick. So that's what we're going to be covering in the next 2 chapters. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you next time.